Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we understood how to develop REST API with HTTP methods, what is request body, what is query parameters, and what is path parameter. And we understood how to deal with JSON data in the REST API. We are taking method input as a JSON and method output also as JSON. But actually, as a programmer, I am not writing the logic to convert Java object to JSON, JSON data to Java object. That conversion will be taken care by our REST controller. When you create REST API by using Spring Boot, internally Spring Boot is using Jackson API. With that Jackson API, it is converting Java object to JSON, JSON to Java object. So we are able to perform our REST APIs. So as of now, we understood what is distributed application. Can you tell me what is a distributed application? If one application is communicating with another application, then that is called as distributed application. Why to go for distributed applications, guys? What is the reason for that? The logic which is developed by one company, we can reuse that. You no need to redevelop the logics again and again. Somebody already developed logic to book the train ticket. I can reuse the same logic to book the train ticket in my project also. I no need to spend years of time, crores of money to develop the same duplicate project, right? We can reuse one company project in the another company project by using distributed application. Okay, loosely coupling will be available. Instead of developing everything in one big application, we can divide them into multiple small applications and they can communicate. For example, if you go for make my trip, hotels booking is one project, trains booking is one project, flights booking is one project. All these projects will be accessed from UI application. UI logic will be separate, backend logic will be separate. Those are also distributed applications only. Nowadays, people are going for full stack development. Full stack development, nothing but front end will be separate, back end will be separate. That is called full stack application. Then next one, there are several distributed technologies are available to develop our web services, right? So earlier, Corba, RMI, EJB, SOAP web services. Currently, we are going for RESTful services. These RESTful services we are developing by using Spring Boot with Web Starter. So when you use Web Starter, you can develop a web application or you can develop distributed application. What is the difference between web application and distributed application? Web application means UI will be available, user interface will be available, end user can communicate with that web application. Distributed application only for B2B communication, no UI. One project will send the request to another project. That project will process the request and will send the response to here. Good. So we understood distributed technologies. Currently we are using Spring Boot to develop our REST API. Okay. Then we discussed about REST API architecture. Okay. When you go for REST API, mainly two actors will be available. One is called provider, another one is called consumer. Who is called as a provider? The application which is giving services to other application is called provider. Who is called consumer? The application which is accessing the services from other applications is called as consumer application. Consumer and provider should be interoperable applications. What is interoperability? What is interoperability, guys? So different technology based projects should communicate with each other. Make My Trip is developed by using one technology IRCTC developed using one technology. Your SBA bank developed using one technology. Google Pay developed using another technology, but still they are communicating. So one technology project is able to communicate with another technology project, that is called interoperability. Backend will be developed by using Java, front end will be developed by using Angular, still they can communicate. That is called interoperability. In order to achieve this interoperability, we are using JSON as a mediator, guys. One application will send the JSON data as an input for another application. So two applications are going to communicate by using JSON. Two applications are going to communicate by using JSON. What is JSON? JavaScript object notation, which will represent the data in the form of key and value. JSON is lightweight. JSON is interoperable. Java can understand. Python can understand. .NET, Angular, React, JavaScript. All the languages available in the market can understand JSON. That's why we are using JSON as a mediator between consumer application and provider application. After this, we discussed about Jackson API, guys. We discussed about Jackson API. Can you tell me what is a Jackson API? What is a Jackson API? That is a third-party library to deal with JSON data in the Java application. If you want to deal with JSON data in the Java application, then we are going to use Jackson API. Using Jackson API, you can convert your Java object to JSON, JSON to Java object. There is a class called object mapper. If you are not using Spring Boot, manually you need to do the conversion. But when you go for the Spring Boot, do you need to write the logic for the conversion, or it is not required? It is not required. Object mapper will be executed by our REST controller. Okay. So after this Jackson API, we discussed about HTTP protocol. In the HTTP protocol, some methods available and some status codes available. Okay. Get method, post method, put method, delete method. What is the meaning of get method? To get the data, body will not be available for the get method. When to go for post method? When to go for post method? If you want to insert the record, if you want to create a resource at the server, provider want to create a new record at the server, then you can go for post method. Body will be available. You can send the data to the post request in the body in the text format or XML or JSON. That is called payload. The request will contain header part and body part. Header is used to send the metadata. Body is used to send the payload. What is the meaning of payload? What is the meaning of payload? Business data. Make My Trip will send passenger data as a payload to the IRCTC. IRCTC will send ticket data as a payload to the Make My Trip. Business data is called as a payload. Okay. Then we have seen some HTTP status codes also. 200, 201, 204, 400, 404, 405, 500. Like that, there are some status codes available. 200 to 299 success category. Okay. 400 server, that means client mistake, bad request, payment gateway failure, resource not found, method not allowed will be available in the 400 category. 500 category, server error. Server is not able to handle our request, then we will get the 500. Can we decide status code for our REST API method? Yes, by using response entity, you can decide the status code for our REST API method. The next one, we discussed about the REST controller. We discussed about REST controller. What is the meaning of REST controller? Distributed component. If you want to develop your application as a distributed application, then you need to go for REST controller. To represent our Java class as a REST controller, we are using @REST controller annotation. So inside this REST controller, we are writing the methods. Those are called REST API methods. REST API methods should be mapped to HTTP protocol methods: get mapping, post mapping, put mapping, delete mapping. So these are the frequently used methods in the REST API development. If suppose in my REST API, if I am not writing this annotation, is there any use of this method? Can client access this method? Can consumer access this method? No, there is no use. Any method that you are writing in the REST API should be mapped to HTTP method. So how to map to the HTTP method? Based on the operation that method is performing. Basically, in the REST API, this is called one operation. This method is performing delete operation. This method is performing updation. This method is performing insertion. This method is performing retrieval. So based on the operation is doing by the method, we need to map that to HTTP method. If your method is responsible to delete the record, then give it the delete mapping for that. Sir, my method will update the record. Can I map it to delete mapping? You can do it, but what other people will think about the delete mapping? It is going to delete the record. But what you are writing? Updating. Confusion. The consumers will get confused to access your REST API. So that's why you need to use proper HTTP method for your REST API methods. REST API method should be mapped to HTTP protocol method. Then after this REST API methods, we are able to understand what is request param, guys. What is a request param? Come on. What is request param? Request param is nothing but query parameter. When consumer want to send some ID, some name to the REST API, they will send it as a query parameter in the URL. Query parameter will be available in the form of key and value format. When the consumer is sending GET request to the server, consumer cannot use body to send the data. The reason, GET request will not contain the body. Now, I want to get the book information by using book ID. I want to get the book data. I will send a GET request. My GET request will not contain the body. Then how can I send the ID to the provider? In the URL. So when you are making GET request to the provider, if you want to send some data, then you have the option to send in the URL. So to send the data in the URL, we are having request param as one option and path variable as another option. You can send the data from consumer to provider as a query parameter or as a path variable. Query parameter will represent in the form of key and value. Path variable will represent direct value. Okay. Then after this, we discussed about request body, guys. We discussed about request body. What is the meaning of this request body? What is the meaning of request body? Request body is used to read the data from the request body. When the consumer is sending the data to the provider, when the consumer is sending payload to the provider, okay, provider should read the payload from the body and convert into Java object. It can be post or put or delete. Data will go in the body. So how our REST API method will read the data from the body? By using @request body annotation. Are you able to follow this? Then after, we discussed about consumes and produces. What is the meaning of consumes and produces, guys? Consumes will represent in which format the provider can accept the payload. Produces will tell in which format provider will give payload to the consumer. That means request body data format, response body data format will be represented by consumes and produces. Consumes represents input data format of the provider method. Whatever the method we have, in which format it is accepting the input will be represented by consumes. What about produces? Produces will represent in which format provider can give response to the consumer. Are you able to follow me? Then after this we discussed about postman. We discussed about postman. Postman is one API testing tool, guys, because we are developing REST API. Every REST API is called as one microservice. So our microservices started. So what is the meaning of a microservices? Small services that we are going to develop in the project is called microservice. So if you are able to develop one REST API, that means you are developing one microservice. When you develop the REST API, presentation logic is not available. Only business logic. Give the JSON data, get the JSON data. Input is JSON, output is JSON. Tomorrow, Angular application will give the input for the REST API. REST API will give the output to the Angular application. That Angular application will take care of the user interface. My REST API contains pure business logic, guys. JSON is input, JSON is output. When we develop the REST API, how do we test that REST API? By using Postman. Because UI is not available, I need to test my backend logic is working as expected or not. So to test our backend functionality, we are using Postman tool. By using that Postman tool, we can send HTTP request to the REST API. Then REST API will process that request. REST API will provide the response for us. Are you guys clear with my point? Good. Any questions? Anyone? Anybody having any questions? We have learnt these concepts so far in the last 4 days. 31st we have started, right? Yeah. 31st we started our discussion related to REST API. In 4 days of time, we learned these many concepts about REST API development. So I'm explaining the concepts. How much you are understanding, how much you are practicing. That is the most important part. Syllabus will be completed. With completion of syllabus, there is no use. Whether you are able to understand the concept, whether you are able to develop the projects on your own, that's important part. Yesterday, I have given a task to develop the REST API project by using MySQL database with DB integration by using Spring Boot plus REST API plus Data JPA integration. So we need to simply perform CRUD operations by using REST API. Insert, update, delete, and retrieve the records. Then test that application functionality, backend application functionality by using Postman tool. How many of you completed? Raise your hands. No. Not completed? Why? What about the remaining people? Why you have not completed the assignment? I already explained how to develop that REST API by using Spring Boot with all the methods, and we just need to integrate Data JPA in that application, and that for that also I have given one video. In that video I explained clearly step by step how to write the code to develop the project. After seeing this video also, if you are not able to develop the project, that means you are not concentrating. You are not keeping your efforts to learn the subject. After giving the video also, if you are not able to develop that project, means what to do? You will struggle a lot to get the job after the course is completed. You need to struggle a lot to get the job. After the course will be completed. In another 1 month of time, I will complete the syllabus. There is no doubt. There is no doubt. Mostly by February mid, our syllabus will be completed. But after that, what you will do? After explaining the project in the class, after giving the video also, still if you are not able to develop that project, that means you are not doing any practice. You are just listening to the class and you are going to hostel. That's it. There is no use. And from morning to evening, I am available here only. Nobody is coming and asking me the doubts. Sir, I am not able to develop this project. I am getting this problem. Could you please help me? The core Java people, advanced Java people are coming with the doubts, but Spring Boot JRTP people are not coming with the doubts. That means you are just coming to the class and you are going to hostel. There is no practice. There is no practice. If you are doing the practice, you will get the problems. Then you will learn problem solving. Without having the practical implementation, you will not get the confidence to attend the interviews, guys. Remember that. Theoretical knowledge will not help you to get the job. If you do the practicals, then only you will get the confidence to attend the interviews. And that too, you are not going for fresher interview. You are going for experienced interviews. When you want to go for experienced interviews, you should be very, very, very strong in the subject. Technically, you should be very strong. Theoretically plus practically also you should be very strong. To become strong in the Java, practice is most important. Developing the projects on your own, that is most important. It's not like whatever I am explaining in the class, if you practice that, there is no use. Along with this, some extra projects you should be able to develop on your own. You need to improve your thought process, your analysis skills, your problem solving skills you need to improve. Good. Now, today we are going to understand another topic, that is Swagger. What is this Swagger? Why we need to go for Swagger? As a Java developer, especially when you are working with the REST APIs, microservices, this Swagger is very, very, very important. Now, first let's understand why should we go for this Swagger. So as we discussed in the REST API, two actors will be available, guys. One is called provider, another one is called consumer. Provider will be available and consumer will be available. Sometimes provider and consumer will be developed in the same team. Okay, UI will be developed by one person, backend will be developed by another person. Sometimes full stack developer, UI, backend, you will only develop. There is no problem. But let's understand the scenario here. Provider is developed by one company. Provider is developed by one company. Assume that provider is developed by IBM company by using Java. IBM people developed this project by using Java. This project is responsible to communicate with the satellites to get the weather information. Okay, they spent years of time, crores of money, and they developed this project. Finally, it got a success. Now they are able to communicate with the satellite to get the weather information. So that logic is ready now. Inside the IBM company, they developed one project by using Java. That project name, let me call it as weather forecaster. So it can get weather information by communicating with the satellite. Now, they spent 2 years of time, 5 crores budget for that. Finally, their project got completed. That project is working as expected. That project is working as expected. Now, IBM people want to do the business with this application. They spent 2 years and they spent 5 crores of money to develop that project. Now, they want to get the profits from that project. They want to do the business with the project. To do that business with the project, IBM people announced that, guys, anybody want to get the weather information, you no need to develop the code again and again. Already I have completed that project. If anybody wants to develop, I will tell you my experience. I spent 2 years of time. 100 people worked on the project. 5 crores of money I have already spent on that project. My project is working as expected. If you want the same functionality, you no need to spend 2 years. You no need to spend 5 crores. Yearly, give me 1 lakh rupees. I will give my logic for you. Okay, like that, IBM people started doing the business with the weather forecast application. So if you pay 1 lakh, IBM will not give the code for you. What IBM will give you? I will not give my code. Why I will not give my code for you? If I give my code, I will not get my business. I will not get my money, right? So this is 5 crores project. I will not give you for 1 lakh. What I do is, for 1 lakh rupees, I will give you service for you, not the project. I will not give the project for you. I will not give my code for you. Yearly, you pay 1 lakh to me. Yearly, you pay 1 lakh to me. For that 1 lakh rupees, I will give the access for you. You send the request to me. I will give the response to you. To execute my logic, to access my logic, to access my application, you pay some yearly license for me. Like this, IBM people will do the business. Any company who is developing the provider, they will do that kind of business. So some people will charge monthly wise, some people will charge request wise, some people will charge yearly, lifetime, like that plans will be available. Some company banking applications are available. For every request, they will charge some amount. If you Google Pay, you want to deduct money from my bank application, for every request, some 1 rupee or 50 paisa, some charges will be available. That Google Pay will pay to the bank. Now here there is a company available, TCS company available. TCS company developing a project by using .NET. Okay. In this .NET application, they want to show weather forecasting information. TCS don't want to develop the logic again because already it is done by IBM. What IBM is telling? Yearly 1 lakh rupees for the license. For this 1 lakh, you can send any number of requests. If you send one request to me, I will give the weather information as a response to you. Like this, there is a business deal between TCS and IBM. IBM is called as a provider. TCS is called as a consumer. The application which is giving services to other application is called as a provider application. The application which is accessing the services from other application is called as a consumer application. Now, TCS people has done that business dealing with the IBM people. Now, TCS is acting as a consumer for the IBM. By seeing the TCS project, HCL people also came. HCL people having one Python application. In that Python application, they want to get the weather information. Now, can HCL also act as a consumer for the IBM? Yes, they can act as. Then there is a company called Wipro company is available. Wipro company developed one project. Wipro company developed one project by using Angular. In that Angular application, they want to get the weather information. That also can act as a consumer. Techem company is available. Tech Mahindra. Tech Mahindra people having one project by using React.js. They want to access weather information from the IBM. Now, all these applications are going to act as a consumer. Provider is developed by using which language, guys? Provider is developed by using Java language. Consumers, different languages from different companies. Now, how these consumers will access the provider? HTTP is a mediator. Consumer will send HTTP request, provider will send HTTP response. In which format they will exchange the data? JSON format. Consumer will send JSON data to the provider, provider will send JSON response to the consumer. So like this, in the real time, our distributed applications are going to work. Project will be developed by one company. That project will provide the services to other projects available in the other companies. That is called web services concept. IBM people developed this project for weather information. They deployed this project in the web. In the internet, their project is running. In the internet, their project is running. So that means they are providing services to other projects through internet. That is called web services concept. Web services nothing but distributed applications. The application which is providing the services to other application is called web service application. Earlier, people used to develop SOAP-based web services. Nowadays, people are developing RESTful services. SOAP-based web services are outdated in the market. People are going for RESTful services in the market. Are you getting my point? Okay. How many actors available in the distributed applications, guys? 2 actors will be available. Who are those 2 actors? One is called provider, another one is called consumer. Who is called provider? The application which is giving the services through internet is called as a provider application. Who is called consumer? The application which is accessing the services from other applications is called consumer. Provider and consumer will be developed using same technology. Is there any rule? No, they can be developed using different technologies. So our application, our distributed application should be interoperable. What is the meaning of interoperable? Java application should be able to communicate with the .NET. .NET should be able to communicate with the Python. Means, guys, whatever the REST API development we are learning, it is not only for the Java, it is universal. .NET people also will develop REST API. Python people will develop REST API. Angular people will access the REST APIs. React people will access the REST API. Angular React for the front end. Front end will access our back end application. So REST API is a universal concept in the software industry. It is not specific to any programming language. It is universal. All the languages are supporting for REST API development. We are from Java community. We are developing the REST API by using Java. REST controller, request param, path variable, consumes, produces is available. If you go for .NET, they will have their own concepts to develop the REST API. But common, they will use HTTP protocol, we will use HTTP protocol. They will use JSON data, we will use JSON data. They will use Postman to test, we will also use Post. Some 90% common things will be available in all the technologies when you go for REST API. Here, we are using REST controller annotation. They may have a different annotation. Are you getting my point? We are using REST controller, Spring annotation, Spring Boot annotation. In the .NET, they will have a different annotation. But concept-wise, it is same. Only syntaxes will be different. Now, the question is, IBM people developed one application. IBM people told that anybody who want to access weather information can pay 1 lakh rupees to me per year. I will give the access for my application. From your application, you send a request. HTTP request you send me and I will give you HTTP response. Are you able to follow this? So that is the deal between IBM and other companies. Tech Mahindra, Wipro, HCL, TCS, 4 companies are interested to communicate with the IBM weather forecast application. But here the problem is, in the IBM, one team is available who developed that application. Now, who should access that application now? Other company teams should access now. I am a provider. I'm a provider. Assume that I'm from IBM company. I developed this application to get the weather information from the satellite. I know what methods available in my application, what URLs available in my application, what is input, what is output, what input I need, what output I will give you. I know that information because I am from the IBM project development team. But you are from TCS, you are in Bangalore, I'm in Hyderabad. Now, if you want to access my application, you need some information. What is the URL of my application? What methods available in my application? Those methods mapped to which request in my application? What is the input for my application? What is the output of my application? I need to provide my provider information to you. Without provider information, you cannot develop the consumer. Are you getting my point? I'm giving the services for you. So what services I'm giving? What is the URL of my provider? What methods available in the provider? Those methods mapped to which HTTP request? Do you need to send a GET request or post or put or delete? What data you need to send in the payload? What data I will send in the payload? You need that documentation, guys. If I don't give you that documentation, can you access the provider? Because provider is developed by one company, consumer should be developed by another company. Now I am from the IBM company project development team. I know what is the logic available because I involved in the development. But you are from Bangalore location, you are in the TCS company. How can you access my application? You need some information. You need some information. What information is required for you? Where is the provider? How is the provider? What methods available in the provider? What request is mapped to that method? What is the input for the provider? What is the output for the provider? You need all that data. If you have all that data, then only you can develop your consumer logic to access my provider logic. Are you getting my point? Huh. So here, who is responsible to send that documentation? Provider team. So provider development team completed the development. We tested by using Postman. Our code is working as expected. Now we are ready for the business. So many companies are interested to access our application. So the people who want to access my application, I will consider them as my business partner. They are my consumers. They will pay the money to access my service. Okay. If you want to access my service, you should know about my service. Are you able to follow me? If you want to access my service, you should know about my service. So that means we need to provide some documentation for you. That documentation we will provide by using Swagger. What is a Swagger? Swagger is a API which is used to provide REST API documentation. What is the meaning of REST API documentation? What is the URL of the REST API? What methods available? What request is mapped to that method? What is the input? What is the output? In which format you need to send the payload for the request? In which format you will get the payload for the output? All provider information will be documented for the consumers. That documentation we will give by using Swagger. Are you able to follow me? So if the Swagger is not available, then what is the problem? If Swagger is not available, then what is the problem? Every day, morning, one call from Tech Mahindra. Boss, what is your URL pattern? Can you tell me what is your method name? Can you tell me what is your URL pattern? What data I need to send you? Okay, I explained in the phone call. Cut. After 5 minutes, call from Wipro. Boss, what input I need to send you? What is the output you are going to give me? what fields I need to send in the input, what fields you will give me in the output. Again, one more call from TCS company development team. Boss, gender I need to send for the person ticket booking or not? Is gender mandatory or is gender optional? Which fields are mandatory? Which fields are optional? This discussion will happen every day. Why? They don't know what I am expecting. They don't know what I am giving. So that confusion will be available for the consumer side development team to develop the logic, because they don't know what code is available in the provider. Will I give my code for the consumer? No, only they should send the request. They should access the response. They should send the request. They should access the response. To send the request and get the response, they should know about the provider. Where is the provider? How is the provider? How many operations are available? What is input for the provider? What is output from the provider? That information is required for the consumer. So to give that information to the consumer, what this IBM people will do? They will generate documentation for the REST API. They will give the documentation to the consumer. If you have the documentation, then what is the benefit? Simple example, sir. Simple example. You are purchasing one mobile from the Samsung company. Okay. So when you get some doubt in that mobile, are you making a phone call to them? How to install that mobile? How to set up that mobile? In the mobile packet only, one user guide will be available. That user guide is a documentation. How to switch on your mobile, how to set up your mobile, how to update your settings in the mobile, how to select the language, how to connect to the internet. Everything will be there in that document. Okay. So different people will purchase the mobiles. Now, so some people comfortable with Telugu, some people comfortable with Hindi and English. The document also will be available in the three languages. Telugu, Hindi, English will be available. So you read the document, you understand how to use that mobile. If you purchase a television, same process, right? They will give you one user manual. Similarly, when consumer want to access the provider, we should give provider documentation to the consumer, user manual. What is there? How to send the request? How to access that? How to access our application? That documentation we will generate by using a tool called Swagger. So can you tell me what is the Swagger? What is the purpose of the Swagger? It is used to generate documentation for REST API. It is used to generate the documentation for REST API. Why we need to generate that documentation, guys? If the documentation is not available, what is the problem? If the documentation is not available, then what is the problem? Provider team, provider side, provider app side, provider app dev team should provide Swagger documentation to consumer app dev team. Okay, consumer app team will understand provider details using Swagger documentation. Get my point? What is the Swagger? Swagger is used to generate documentation for REST API. Provider application development team should provide Swagger documentation to consumer application development team. Consumer application team will understand the provider details using Swagger documentation. So documentation will tell Swagger documentation will show provider information. What information? Where is the provider? I mean to say, what is the URL of the provider? How is provider? That means what operations available? What operations? That means what are the methods available in the provider? Input format for the provider, output format for the provider. All this information will be available in the Swagger documentation. Consumer team will understand provider details by using this Swagger documentation. Are you guys able to follow me? What is the Swagger? Come on. Swagger is used to generate documentation for REST API. Provider application development team should provide Swagger documentation to consumer application development team. Swagger documentation will show provider information. Where is provider? How is provider? What is input format? What is output format? Consumer application team will understand provider details using Swagger documentation. Are you able to follow me? Now, can we add Swagger documentation to our REST API? Already we created one REST API, right? Can we add the documentation for that REST API? Yes. And another benefit we are going to get with the Swagger documentation. Note, using Swagger, we can test provider functionality also. If Swagger is added to the project, Postman is not required. So as of now, how we are testing our API? By using Postman. Postman is a tool which is used to send HTTP request. If you add Swagger documentation for the project, Swagger will provide one UI also to test the REST API. If Swagger UI is available, Postman is not required. Are you getting my point? Now, so how to add the Swagger to our application? Yesterday, we created our REST API, right? Go to this REST API, go to pom.xml. In the REST API project, what are the dependencies available, guys? As of now, what dependency available? We are having web starter. Only web starter is available. Along with this web starter, we need to add Swagger dependency, guys. Okay. For the Swagger, there is a dependency available. If you add this Swagger dependency, then documentation will be generated. You no need to do anything else. You just need to add one dependency in the pom.xml. What is that dependency? Spring Doc Open API Starter WebMVC UI. Okay, so it will provide documentation for our API and it will provide user interface also to test our API. So currently in my project that dependency not available. Let me add that dependency. Take this dependency and let me add it. Good. That's it. We are done. So with this dependency, documentation will be generated for our API. Okay. Let's go here. Update Maven project. Maven, update the project. Okay. Refresh. Run as boot application. It failed. Let me check it in the MVN repository. version difference, right? Maven, update the project. Run as boot app. Yes. So our application started with the port number 8080. So I have added Swagger dependency in our application. So earlier I have added 2.0, it failed. Now I have added 2.1.0 dependency. Spring Doc, Open API Starter, WebMVC UI. Once we added this dependency in our project, let's go to browser. See here, when you go to the browser, localhost colon 8080. What is our application URL is available, guys? Already we are having customer is available. I'm getting the customer data in the JSON format. Customers available. I'm getting list of records. Okay. Along with this, if you use localhost colon 8080 hyphen swagger hyphen UI.html, can you see the UI is coming for our application? Can you see the UI is coming for our application? This is called documentation. Open API definition. What it is showing me now? What it is showing me now? Customer REST controller having 5 methods. Customer REST controller is having 5. Can we get this information in the Postman? Postman will not tell you about your API. Postman is just used to send the request and get the response. But if you go for Swagger UI, the information about the API is available. So what I have done, how to add Swagger in our project. Spring Boot with Swagger. Spring Boot 3.x plus Swagger. How we are adding Swagger to our project? Add below dependency in the pom.xml. That's it. Add below dependency in pom.xml file. Run the application and access. Run the application and access Swagger UI page with below URL. Okay. So my URL, I'm using embedded container running on the port number 8080. HTTP colon localhost colon 8080 slash swagger hyphen UI dot HTML. That's it. So if you want to add Swagger documentation to your project, you just need to add this dependency in the pom.xml file. Then run the application, access the Swagger UI page with below URL. So if you access this URL in the browser, then we are getting Swagger documentation page. That documentation will be available in 2 formats. One is user interface documentation is available. Second one, JSON documentation also will be available. Here /v3/API docs available. If you click on this, what it is coming now? JSON is coming. This is JSON is information about the API. What methods available? What are the URL patterns available? What is input for that API? What is output from the API? Everything will be available in the JSON format. You take this JSON, you go to your IDE, you create one file, sample file, test.json, just to see what is the data available. Control Shift F. So it will give you your API information in the JSON. Okay, what it is telling? API URL, where the API is running, the URL of the API, what are the paths available, /customer. It is a get path. Put method, which is used to update the customer, 200. Post, which is used to add the customer. The next one, /customers, which is used to get the customers. /customer/ID, which is used to delete the customer. /customers available. This is the customer data, ID, name, and email. Okay, all the methods available in the API, it is providing in the JSON format. Consumers will read this JSON, will understand about the provider, and they will start the consumer development. If this JSON understanding is difficult, no problem. You can go to the UI page like this. Okay. If you go to this UI page, what it is showing? Server URL, localhost colon 8080. Inside the REST API, what operations available? Get, put, post, get, delete, get customer. So here, click on this drop down. When I click on this drop down, what is this option? Try it out. What is the meaning of try it out? Send the request. When I send the request, am I able to get the response? Yes, this is the response body and these are the response headers available. What is the status code we are getting? 200 is the status code. In which format you can get the response? It produce response in which format? It can produce the response only in the JSON format. How this Swagger understand that it produces JSON? In the REST API, I have given produces concept for that. So if you go to my get request method, what I am telling now? Produces. Produces is equal to JSON. As I am telling, produces is equal to JSON. In the drop down, it is showing me produces is JSON format. Now, I want to test another get request method / customers available. Click on that. And here, what is the option? Try it out. Click on execute. What happened now? Am I able to get the which is easy to test the REST API? Swagger is easier, Postman is easy. Swagger is easy. Why Swagger is easy? UI is available. So they will tell you what are the methods available, what are the URL patterns available. And if you just click the button, that will send the request to the API and will get the response. Now I want to test one post method. I want to test one post method. Click on post method. So I want to try it. Request body, which format it is telling? Postman will not tell all these things. This Swagger is telling that, boss, there is a post method with / customer. For that, you need to send the data in the request body in the JSON format. This is how you need to send the data. They are giving the format of the data also. So beautiful documentation is available in the Swagger to understand the provider. Provider logic will not display. Provider information will be displayed. What is our provider? Where is our provider? What operations available in the provider? How to test the provider? What input that provider is expecting? What output that provider will give you? So see, when I go for this post method, clearly it is telling you no need to send any request parameter or path variable, not required. But you need to send request body in the JSON. What data you need to send in the request body? CID, CNAME, email. Like this, you need to send the data. What response you will get from the provider? Success response you will get in the plain text format. In the plain text format, how this Swagger know that my method will take JSON as a input, my method will give text as a output? In our method, we have given produces and consumes. Because of this produces and consumes, my Swagger is telling me that in the REST API, post method will take JSON as a input. It will give text as a output. Now you are consumer. Can you understand the provider now? What is the URL of the provider? What is input for the provider? What is output from the provider? In which format you need to send the input? Okay, in which format you will get the output? This is user manual for the REST APIs. When you are developing the REST API, if you are from the provider team, you need to add Swagger documentation to the project. How to add the Swagger documentation? Just we need to add one dependency in the pom.xml, kamkatham. So you just need to access that URL. The beautiful documentation is available for the REST API. In how many formats that documentation is available? 2 formats. JSON documentation is available and UI documentation is also available. So now I want to test a delete method, guys. But I want to know what data I need to send in the delete method, what data I will get from the delete method. I'm a consumer. I don't know about that. Simply go to Swagger URL and go to this delete. Now, what they are saying? What they are saying is for the delete method. Boss, customer ID is mandatory in the request. You need to try it. When you try it out, what they are saying, if I click on execute, what it is telling? Required field is not provided. Postman will tell you that. Postman will, beautiful validation is also available. My REST API method is expecting a path variable. My REST API delete method is expecting a path variable. Now I'm sending a delete request without path variable. What it is saying? Required field is not provided. Now pass the customer ID, then click on execute. Path variable execute. Then what is the response? This is the request it is sent to the REST API. Delete the customer with one as a ID. Deleted. What is the response I got? Customer deleted. What is the status code I got? 200. So now response format plain text. Like this, you can understand the REST API documentation and you can test your REST API. So in the companies, people will use Swagger UI also to test the REST API. Some people will use Postman to test the REST API. Some people will use Swagger UI to test the REST API. But which is good? Which is easy for us? Swagger is easy because beautiful documentation, colors, validations are available. But if I go for Postman, it is not available. You need to type everything in the Postman. But Swagger, it will tell you about the provider. Are you getting my point? Any questions? So with this, you understood what is provider development and how to test the provider using Postman and how to give documentation about the provider by using Swagger. The thing that you need to do for this one is you just need to add this dependency in the pom.xml. I have given in the notes what is the dependency you need to add. After adding this dependency, you access this URL. This is a predefined URL, guys. Now, did I develop this UI page? Who provided this UI? Swagger provided that UI page. We have not developed this UI. Swagger provided that UI. That means Swagger understanding our project and Swagger checking how many REST controllers available, what are the methods available, what are the URL patterns, what is input, what is output, what is consumed, what that means it is reading our project and it is giving the information about our project. Are you clear? Now, but in the real time, in some companies, Swagger will not be available. In some projects, Swagger documentation will not be available. Documentation, some companies will provide in the PDF format. This is my API URL. This is my method. This is input. This is output. They will give you in the PDF format. Some projects will use Swagger. Some projects may not use Swagger. Especially in the banking company projects, this Swagger documentations and all will not be available. They don't want to expose all the API information to the consumers. Okay, they will give you restricted access for particular method by giving one Word document or by giving some PDF document. They will give the documentation. If Swagger is available, they will give the URL of the Swagger. If Swagger is not available, they will give you one PDF document about the API. Based on that, you need to develop your consumer application. Are you able to follow me? Good. So with this, we got the clarity about provider development and provider documentation by using Swagger. Got it, guys? Next one, we need to develop consumer. So tomorrow, what we do is I will develop IRCTC application, dummy IRCTC application. Okay. So we are going to develop one dummy IRCTC application. That IRCTC application I will deploy in the AWS cloud, guys, because currently my project is running in my system, provider running in one system, same system. If a consumer also, if I execute in the same system, you will not get that feel. So that's why what I will do is, so if I am running provider and consumer in the same system, you will not understand the power of distributed application. So what I will do is, tomorrow we will develop IRCTC application and I will deploy that IRCTC application in the AWS cloud. So where our provider will run in the cloud. Now, then I will develop make my trip application in my local. I will connect make my trip application to IRCTC application. One project will run in my local system. Another project will run in the AWS cloud. If you want to understand how to deploy our application in the AWS cloud, okay, you need to create account in the AWS cloud, guys. You need to create account in the AWS cloud, and you need to know how to create account in the AWS cloud, how to create virtual machines in the AWS cloud, how to create one AWS machine, easy to Linux machine, how to deploy our application. For that, in the video in the YouTube, I have given one video how to create account in the AWS cloud. So here if you see popular videos, I think recently that video is getting popular. AWS account setup. Yeah, see here. I have uploaded one video how to create account in the AWS cloud within 2 minutes of time. AWS account, this video, AWS account setup in 2 minutes of time. It requires your debit card information, guys, but amount will not be deducted from your card. Only 2 rupees they will charge, and they will give back those 2 rupees also once your account is created. So I want all of you to create that account in the AWS cloud and practice how to create one Linux machine in the AWS cloud, so that our provider we will deploy in the AWS cloud, consumer we will develop in the local. From this local application, we will connect to the application running in the AWS cloud. Then you will understand real REST API development. If I run provider and consumer in the same system, you will not get that feel. If you want to feel that you are developing a distributed application, you need to run the provider in one system, consumer in the another system. We need to connect these two applications. To understand that real web services development, I want to deploy my provider in the AWS cloud. So to deploy the provider in the AWS cloud, today you have two things to do. One is you need to create account in the AWS cloud, and the second one, you need to learn how to create Linux machine in the AWS cloud, how to connect to that Linux machine in the AWS cloud. Are you getting my point? In order to do that, sir, we don't know that now we are new. No problem. We have videos for that. Let me share. Sorry, in Ashok IT channel, everything is available. Unnecessarily we paid the fees. Huh? Okay. I'm sharing the videos here. Okay. Yeah. Guys, check your WhatsApp group. In the WhatsApp group, I shared the video. You need to go through the first two videos, guys. In the JRTP also, I'm going to share project batch people. I have shared 4-5 videos now. You no need to watch all those videos, guys. First two videos. First video, how to create account in the AWS cloud, and the second video, how to create a Linux machine in the AWS cloud. If you watch those two videos, then it is sufficient. Then it is sufficient so that we can deploy our application in the AWS cloud. Got my point? So that is the today's task for you. Create account in the AWS cloud and create virtual machine in the AWS cloud. Just basic. In the video very clearly I have explained how to create the account and how to create the Linux machine. Okay, good. So if you do that practice, then you will understand real web services development, guys. If you don't deploy in the AWS cloud, you can do one thing also. You can run provider and consumer in the same computer also. But what is the problem? That feeling will not be available. We are developing the distributed application. That's why I want to run two projects into different computers and I want to connect to them. Fine, good. Go through the first two videos I have given. Account setup and Linux machine creation in the AWS. Okay, fine. Any questions, anyone? What we discussed in the today's session, guys? We revised what we learned so far in the rest. In the 4 days, we learned lot of new concepts, guys, right? And today we understood what is the Swagger and how to add the Swagger in our Spring Boot application. Tomorrow we will see IRCTC development and how to deploy that IRCTC application in the AWS cloud. Then we will develop a consumer, how to access provider from the consumer. One mini project we are going to develop on the REST API. Provider plus consumer development. Good. Thank you. Let me upload the notes. Any questions, anybody? Offline people? Anybody having any questions? No questions, huh? You're able to understand the REST API? Difficult or easy? Little bit confusing. Confusing. For JRTP people, you need to feel proud, guys. You are getting this content for free. In the outside, for REST APIs, microservices, people will charge 5,000 extra. But I am giving for free of cost for the project batch. Today's notes is updated. All Spring Boot assignments for practicing. Okay, sure. I will share that. Online students, any questions? Anybody? Listen to the questions, guys. Yeah. Any questions from online people?
Hello, sir.
Yes, man. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, so request body, I mean payload is also built by Swagger for
Yes,
post request.
payload built by Swagger. That means Swagger will tell you the structure of the payload.
Structure
So
of
when you have post request method,
okay.
in which format you need to send that body in the request, that structure will be given by the Swagger. That means CID, CNAME, what is the order, what are the keys that we need to send, that structure will be given by the Swagger. Yes, that is the main advantage. When you go for the Postman, it will not give the structure. You need to write the structure. But when you go for the Swagger, it will give the structure also, in which structure, in which format, what data, sample data it will show you. What data you need to send in the request and what data you will get in the response. Swagger can do that. Yes, it is showing that.
Okay. What about the header part, sir?
Header part it will not show you, sir. Header part that we need to send manually. I will explain how to send the headers.
Okay.
Generally, the headers we are going to use to send metadata.
Yeah.
Like security information that I want to send, tokens I want to send. In the security, we are going to see how to send the headers.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you, sir.
Good.
Hi, sir. Good morning.
Very good morning.
Sir, it is not need to configure Swagger class in application?
Sir, good question. Earlier, when we are working with the Spring Boot 2.x version, if you just add the dependency, that is not sufficient. Along with the dependency, you need to create one Swagger config class also. How that Swagger config class will be available in my Git repository, earlier, long back, I have uploaded that project. So if you see, Swagger is available, Spring Boot REST API Swagger. Earlier, when you add Swagger for 4 years back, I have done this project. This project is by using Spring Boot 1.x version, but currently we are using 3.x version. Earlier, we need to configure Swagger dependencies like this, and we need to create one Swagger configuration class. Let me show you that class also. Docket object, yes, we need to create that. Like this, you need to write the logic to configure the Swagger. But in the 3.x version, it's not required. If that auto configuration came into picture now, if you just add the dependency, it is sufficient. Documentation is coming. But in the 2.x version, along with the dependency, you need to write some configuration class also, but now it's not required. Good.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, hi sir, good morning.
Very good morning.
Sir, like what if we have multiple controller classes?
No problem, sir. So in a project, multiple REST controllers can be available. It will show you for every REST controller one section. Greet controller, these methods available. Welcome controller, these methods available. How many REST controllers you have in the project? For all the REST controllers, documentation will be given by Swagger. Currently in my project, one REST controller is available. When you are practicing, you create 2 to 3 REST controllers. You will understand the look and feel of the Swagger documentation. It will support for multiple controllers also.
Okay, sir. Actually, before we are doing in the configuration class, right?
Now
Like,
it's not required. That is what
no.
I told you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Hi, so good morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Get
Tell me.
get mapping it accept request body also, but get mapping doesn't have the body, right?
Yeah, get mapping will not accept the body, sir.
But if you write the get request body, request body annotation, and if you get the data, so employee object is showing.
Let me check it once. I will check that and let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, sir.
Yeah, hello.
Why use Linux instead of Windows and or iOS?
Sir, in the real time, we don't deploy applications on the Windows machines, sir. We will deploy on the Linux machines only. I want to show you the real best practices because Windows is a secured, not secured and costly operating system. Linux is free and secured operating system. In the real time, we will use only Linux machines to run our applications, not the Windows machines.
Okay.
Got my point?
Sure.
Yeah, hello.
My question is, I need to read the data from header pot also. My
Get the
recommendation.
request header annotation is available. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have
need
not
to read the
explained
data.
listen,
Okay.
I have not explained the headers in the class. We'll discuss that in the coming sessions.
Oh.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. Could you please explain when to go for the query parameter and the path variable?
Sure. We'll do that.
Hi, sir.
Yeah, hello.
How this Swagger is internally working, and this won't cause any security issue because it's reading our code, right?
It's not security issue. It is going to read all the REST controllers available in the project. So
Okay.
they will use internally reflection API and they will understand our methods and they will provide the documentation. That's why in some projects, they will not use the Swagger because it is exposing everything available in our application.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Is there an option to restrict the
Yes, you can do that also.
without displaying the Swagger? Is there an option for that?
Yes, we can customize that configuration.
Hello, sir. Is there any automated tool to generate the PDF API document, or we have to do just?
We have to write manually. So there is no tool to generate the document in the PDF format automatically. You need to create the document manually and you need to share it with your consumer team. And in the interview, they will ask one question like this. How you get provider documentation? You are working in one company, provider is developed in the another company. How you will get the provider documentation to you? Okay, so they will be sending some emails, guys. So one company will send the document to another company in the email format. Okay, so they will send it to our product owner or our manager. Our manager will forward the documentation to the team members. So one company will send their document to another company through email format, or they will use some Git repositories. Common Git repository will be available, or there will be some common SharePoint will be available. So they will upload the document into that SharePoint. We need to download from there. So multiple platforms are there to exchange the documents from one company to another company.
Will they use Confluence for this, sir?
Some people can use Confluence pages. Some people will use Git repositories. Some people will use a SharePoint. Some people will use email. It depends on the situation.
Okay. Yeah.
Sir, do we need to specify the version when adding the Swagger dependency?
It's not required. Boot will take care of that. Let's try that once by removing it.
So, and other questions, sir, actually, in Spring Boot 3.0, the currently industry is using from how many years? I mean,
Sir, 3.x industry is currently not using. The reason is 3.x came into market in the 2-3 months back only. Whenever the new version comes, immediately we don't use that in the project. Okay. Still
Okay.
industry using 2.x also, 2.x only. And when you attend the interview, don't say that you are using boot 3.x version. You need, because you are going with the fake experience 2 to 3 years, you need to say boot 2.x only, not 3.x. Sir, then why are you teaching 3.x? If I teach 2.x, people will write a Google review. Ashok is teaching old versions of the Spring Boot. Yes or no? So that is the reason I'm teaching the latest version, but in the industry, latest version is not using as of now. People are going with only 2.x version in the industry.
Okay. So only small differences, right, sir?
We will conclude the differences between 2.x and 3.x also.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Sir, with that Swagger documentation, we are going to develop our consumer API,
Yes,
right?
correct. So we'll see how to develop the consumer also.
Okay,
Tomorrow
with
I
this
will show you how to deploy the provider in the AWS. Then we will start our consumer development also. Okay. There are multiple ways to develop the consumer, sir. REST template is available, web client is available, FIAN client is available. There are multiple ways. We will go to the consumer development part. By this weekend, we will complete this project. Provider plus consumer.
Okay.
This Sunday also we have the class, guys. This Sunday also we have class because from Monday I will not be available. Monday I am going to Shabarimala. I will be back on 11th. From 8th to 11th I will not be available for the classes. So I will see if any other faculty available to take the classes for 2 to 3 days of time, or else we need to take the holidays. I will check and update you. So Sunday I will take the class. By Sunday we will complete this project. From Monday to next Wednesday, I will not be available. Wednesday or Thursday.
So during the time, please give some assignments, sir. We'll
Sure,
complete
sir.
and be ready.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, Ashok, we have an HTML methods are there, get, push, put, post, and delete. No, apart from that, there I think one more method, the patch, right? What is
Patch
the
is
purpose
available,
of?
options available, head available. We'll discuss that, sir. But mainly these 4 methods we are going to use as part of the API development.
Yes, Ashok, but interviewer are
I
asking
will
about
tell you,
this.
I will cover that. So today is not the last class of REST API.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Ashok, one question.
Yeah.
How it understands the backend, which system it is hitting, like a production system or a development system
We will
from the
discuss that,
Swagger?
sir. So
From the Swagger.
generally non-prod API URLs, prod API URLs will be available. Okay.
Hello,
Okay.
sir.
Huh.
If industry is using 2.x version of Spring Boot, then we are using this Swagger. We should know the configuration.
Yes,
Git
sir. I will give Git repository for that.
Okay.
Okay. Cool, guys. Good. Fine. Thank you. With this, I'm stopping for today. We'll meet in the tomorrow session. So plan accordingly. Sunday also we have a class. Thank you, guys.